Jeez. Swirl it all up. Yeah, I think I got some in my hair. Welcome back, guys. So everything I've been doing on this Miata has been to prep to get the front end reconstructed. But one thing I wanted to do before rebuilding the whole front end and covering everything back up with fenders was I noticed I had these huge rust bubbles that were going to become a problem if not dealt with immediately. So here's one of the first places there's rust that I'm going to fix. Got a little bit of rust right here on the passenger front. So I decided I would go through the entire process on how to correctly fix rust spots and show you guys everything step by step. You're gonna need a few things to fix body rust, and it looks like a lot, but the process is pretty simple and we'll go through everything. So first thing you're gonna need is the body patch pieces. If the hole is through the car, you're gonna need some body patch. You got Bondo glass, you got body filler, you got putty spreaders for the fillers, sanding block. I got 3 different grits of sandpaper. Remember, when you're talking about sandpaper, the lower the number, the more abrasive the grit. So I got 60, 120, and 220. I also got some glazing spot putty. That's for some like really intricate detail if we go that far. And then a few different cans of spray paint. Let's get to it. So the first thing I did before even sanding the rust is I got some alcohol, some isopropyl alcohol, and cleaned off the area that I was going to be sanding down, because as I was sanding, I know there was already dirt and rust on there. And then I hit the rust spots with 60 and 80 grit sandpaper. Remember, when you're talking about sandpaper, the higher the number, the finer the sandpaper is, so the less abrasive it is. So I started off with a really abrasive sandpaper so I could cut through all the rust. So our sanding block actually came with 80, 180, and 320 grit sandpaper, so I might as well use this. You can always tell the grit of the sandpaper by the label on the back. So this one says 80 here, 80 here. All right, so you can see that the 80 is not cutting into it the way that I want it to. There's still all these bubbles and bumps. So I think I'm gonna go down to the 60 grit sandpaper.
Later.
Okay, we also have technology. So metal wire brush on the end of a drill is another way to sand.
A little later.
All right, we got all this metal cleaned up. On to the other side. Damn, this is nasty. Look, let's show you guys. Jeez. So after sanding everything down and grinding everything down, I noticed that the driver's side actually did have a few small holes in it, which is the last thing you want to see when you're dealing with rust. That means the rust has eroded through all of your metal. All right, guys, so because these holes are not that bad, they're not as deep as I thought, but I wanted to be prepared. I don't think I'll use the body patch, but if you do need to use the body patch, you'll cut out the piece you need, remove the adhesive side, and you usually want to stick it from behind the hole that you're patching. If you put it on top, it will just get kind of like mushy and messy. That's how you would use that, but I don't think we're going to need to use this today. So to make sure that the first layer of Bondo, the Bondo fiberglass filler, sets really well into that thin piece of metal where all those holes are starting to form, I actually hammer in that portion of the body so that the fiberglass Bondo has a little bit more surface area to bond to and has a little bit more depth to grab into. It's time we gotta get going onto the Bondo glass. So we'll start mixing this. To mix the Bondo fiberglass, it seems like a really tricky thing to do when you read the back of the can, but really all you need to do is create a circle about a 1/2 inch high, swirl it all up together, and then just run your hardening agent over top in a thin line on top of that. And remember, when you spread your Bondo, your hardener with your filler, you really want to make sure that you scoop and spread like you're painting versus whipping it around like a cake. So scooping and spreading will allow that agent to bond more smoothly, and it will actually slow down the activation process because you'll cover more of a surface area versus just stirring everything up together. Alright, got this side all done. Gonna go get the other side. Gonna let that dry. Fuck yeah, I think I got some in my hair. So once I had the Bondo glass set on the car. I let that cure for 20 minutes, then I came back and hit that with 80 and 60 grit sandpaper, smoothing it all down. We don't have to have this one perfect because the next layer will be what is the smooth layer that we prime and paint. This one we just have to get sanded down, get smoothed out so that we can put the next layer on.
Much later. Much later. Much later.
Then I clean that down and mix the Bondo filler. Bondo filler and the Bondo glass are the same thing. Get a 1/2 inch circle down, run your hardening agent over top, mix it all together. Do the same spreading technique with the Bondo filler. Getting the Bondo filler on was pretty smooth and pretty easy. I wasn't super concerned with how nice this looked because this is part of the body that's gonna be covered by a fender anyway. I was more concerned about just getting rid of the rust completely so it doesn't come back once the fender's on top of it, and just making sure that I had a kind of a smooth finish. So the Bondo glass, I was not worried about getting that on smoothly. I just wanted to glob it on over top of the rust spots. And the Bondo filler was just a nice smooth layer. Honestly, probably could have skipped out on the Bondo filler, but I really want to do this right way and show you guys every single step. So once I had the Bondo filler all set and cured, I hit both of those sections of the car with 80, 180, and 320 grit sandpaper just so they'd be really nice and smooth for the primer going on later. Alright, so the first coat is dry. It only takes a few minutes to set before you can apply another coat, so here goes the second coat. We're only going to do 2 coats, so here we go. Alright, so here's the one side now. Looks pretty good. Boom, ba, ba. And here's the other side. This side was a little more bumpy, and I laid the original filler on really thick. So that's what you see here. This is not rust. That was just, I put way too much filler on there. But in this scenario where I don't care about how it looks, I'd rather have too much than too little. So there you go, both sides. So at this point, this stuff takes about 6 hours to fully cure. I gotta go record a podcast with the boys. So we'll just put a little bit of black paint on tomorrow night. Lickety split, should be good to go. The primer that I used was actually a filler primer. It's actually a little bit thicker than most primers, and when you set it on, it'll fill any minute details that you might have missed. Once the filler primer sets, it actually takes 6 hours to cure. So I won't be painting this black until tomorrow night. A few things that could have made my life easier doing this is having a faster weight of sand. I know that like an electric sander is probably like 50, 60 bucks at Harbor Freight, and then you gotta buy all the pads. But having that would have saved so much time. Even a grinder or something more powerful than a drill with a steel wire brush on the end of it. Just the time it took to sand. I mean, I love bodywork, and I know I love taking the time to sand and work on the details. This was kind of an easy job to get my chops back up. But having that grinder or electric sander will save you so much time if you're someone who just wants to get this job done quickly.